and Gordon Brown made quite a moving speech, went to the palace, Buckingham Palace, the Queen resigned, and the Queen sent for David Cameron. David Cameron then put in place a coalition, the first coalition government in Britain since 1945, since the Second World War. We've had situations where there have been very small majorities, and we've even had some minority government effectively for a time. But this coalition, which the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats put in place, is a novel development for the United Kingdom. Cameron is the youngest Prime Minister since Lord Liverpool in 1812, for those of you who like some historical facts. And the coalition, I think, is unusual in many respects, in that it's a full coalition, in that there are Liberal Democrats going into the cabinet. There are five Liberal Democrats in the cabinet. There are 15 Liberal Democrat ministers, and Clegg has been given the post of Deputy Prime Minister. It's a coalition which, however, is going to have to face some really tough questions, and the major issue is going to be public spending cuts. Now, before going on to policy and talking about what might actually change in terms of policies as a result of this coalition, I just want to make a couple of remarks about the opposition to coalition, because there is, in a sense, because it's such an unusual feature of British politics, going into coalition was by no means something which everyone in the Liberal Democrats or the Conservative Party wanted to see happen. And they particularly, in the Conservative Party, didn't want to see it happen if the price of coalition was acceding to some of the policies which the Liberal Democrats wanted, the most important of which would be a major change in the British electoral system towards some kind of alternative vote system. So there's opposition in the Conservative Party on the backbenches, the ordinary members who are not in government, and this opposition is enhanced perhaps by the fact that there are fewer government posts to go around to members of the Conservative Party, some of them being taken by the Democrats. But I think there's a good deal of grassroots unhappiness, but not half as much as there is in the Liberal Democratic Party, who, many of whose members would much have preferred to go into coalition with Labour. On the Conservative side, the Tory right, the right of the party, who David Cameron is not altogether sympathetic with, talked about the coalition in terms of a broke-back coalition. Did Brokeback Mountain make it? Yes. It was a remark he made to some Conservatives in a public house called, rather charmingly, the Boot and Flogger Wine Bar. And the Tory right is, I think, not happy with the situation. The Liberal Democrats at the grassroots, many of them have talked about the toxic Tories, and at the Liberal Democratic Conference, Vince Cable talked about capitalist spivs and made a very populist attack on bankers. I think there are signs that it's going to be difficult to keep the coalition together. I'll talk a bit about the Labour Party in a minute, but at the moment, what the coalition is planning, and this was a real change, is that the coalition will last. They're moving legislation to abolish the Prime Minister's power to dissolve Parliament when it becomes convenient. So at the moment, what looks as though it's being planned is a Parliament that will last through until 2015. So they're planning for a 5-year coalition, a 5-year Parliament, in the hopes that in that period, many of the very unpopular policies which the government needs to get through, particularly in terms of cutting public expenditure, can be got through and can be sustained. The Labour Party, Gordon Brown resigned, and leadership election was triggered, and as you probably saw, after the leadership elections take a long time in the Labour Party because they have to go through 2 or 3 constituencies have to vote. But after a rather Cain and Abel-like fight between Ed Miliband, the younger brother, and someone who was Foreign Secretary and seen as one of the most able people in the Labour Party, Ed Miliband, the younger brother, won by a very small proportion of the vote and won the Labour leadership entirely, almost entirely, as a result of him gaining support, having the advantage in the trade union section. Now that is extremely important because one of the big issues, I think, on the agenda in British politics is how far the unions are going to mount a sustained campaign against the public spending cuts which we're going to have to enforce over the next, well, possibly 1, 2, 3 years, who knows, to deal with the British deficit. We're certainly in for a period of real pain in terms of public spending. Departments have been asked to cut their expenditure by something like 30% in some cases. Some topics, some areas are ring-fenced. The idea is that health, for example, will not be affected. Certainly education and higher education, we are expecting savage cuts. The trade unions, who, what I put on here is the trade union membership. Trade union membership has been declining in Britain, but 61% of our trade union members are in the public sector. And what I think is on the cards for the first time for many, many years is industrial unrest of a kind we haven't seen really since the Thatcher period. If that happens, Ed Miliband, as leader of the Labour Party, is going to be in a very difficult situation. He was elected on union votes, but the unions are extremely unpopular, and have become even more unpopular if they seem to be stopping public services, transport, garbage collection and so on. But the other point is that Labour is also in financial difficulties, and it needs the union money to keep it going. So what happens to Labour and whether it really tilts to the left is going to be a very interesting issue to watch over the next few months. I said that we are going to see some changes in policy, and I just want to end